I spent 300,000 Robux making this Roblox game. A few months ago I had this idea to make an infection round based game, inspired by games that I grew up playing like Halo Infection as well as Call of Duty Infection. For those of you that don't know me, I've been working on Roblox for 2 years now, and actually when I came up with this idea I was coming off the utter failure of Battle Ball. Although the game was fun, it never really gained the traction it deserved because of a few different bugs as well as some gameplay issues. So I quickly got to work, built a third-person shooter system as well as the matchmaking system, and honestly the game was pretty fun, but it was missing quite a few little things that would actually bring it to the next level. Just to get the game working, I started by using all the assets from the toolbox, which as we know are very subject to copyright. Therefore, the first thing I spent Robux on was paying for artists. For every asset that was in the game, it ended up costing us about 50,000 Robux, which seems like a lot, but considering that they did all of the guns as well as all the maps, I think it was worth it. So, once I was able to implement all of the assets in the game, as well as change the UI to a more updated look, we started doing some testing. And naturally, we found a bunch of bugs. It's kind of to be expected when you first start doing testing, but you know, it can be slightly frustrating when you've been working on a game for so long and you have to rebuild a few systems. After all the testing, I knew I was gonna have to make some changes to the game. So the first thing I did was I added NPC zombies that also attack and help the infected. This made it a lot easier to be a first infected, and it also made it a lot more interesting. I also just changed a bunch of different gameplay things and balancing to make it more interesting. Gameplay also felt a little bit flat, so what I did is I actually added different classes for infected. So I added a heavy zombie as well as a light zombie, and then I also added abilities. So there's 6 different survivor abilities as well as 6 different infected abilities. Once the core gameplay loop was completed, I added in 6 different game modes to keep the gameplay fresh as well as to increase replayability. With the bulk of the game's development finished, it was finally time to move on to the next step and start spending some more Robux, which was the thumbnail. I don't think I can put into words how important it is to have a good thumbnail. It's ridiculous. There's this little metric on Roblox called the qualified click-through rate. Now, this is arguably either the most important or the second most important metric when it comes to getting into the algorithm with your game. A really good thumbnail can literally double the CCU of your game if it's done right. So, what are the most important things when you're making a thumbnail? You want it to be somewhat simple, you want it to really represent what the game is, and then you also want it to be high quality. Now, to explain this properly, let me show you the thumbnail of Battle Ball. So, this thumbnail, super high quality, looks great, but when you look at it, you have no idea what the game is. And what happened was, a lot of players would join the game, didn't know what to expect, and then just got bored and left because it wasn't what they were expecting. I don't know what they were expecting, but it wasn't what they were expecting. So with all that in mind, we paid another 50,000 Robux to be able to have a strong thumbnail that would represent the game really, really well. And boy, was that a waste of money. This was completely not the artist's fault. The work that they did looked outstanding, and it was really, really high quality. But looking at this, does this remind you of another game? Well, I had the great idea to say, well, Rival's thumbnail works. Why wouldn't it work for an infection game? If we put zombies, people will just think that it's a shooter game with zombies. And this was the reaction that players had to that. So we got completely review bombed. It is what it is. People were joining and just leaving right away and leaving a dislike, calling it a Rival clone when the game literally has nothing to do with Rivals and looks nothing like it at all, to the point that apparently there was someone walking around paying people Robux to dislike the game. I don't know how true it is, but apparently it's true. So with 100,000 Robux down the drain, no thumbnail, and a game that's pretty much done but not ready to be released, I had to remake the thumbnail myself. So this is the final thumbnail that we came up with. I actually made a few, but this is the one that we decided to go with. So with our new thumbnail, we re-released the game. Also, another side note, if you want your community to hate you, re-release a game and erase their progress. Like, we tried to compensate it, but honestly, it's a lose-lose no matter what you do. That being said, it was a necessary evil because would you join a game that has a 50% like ratio, it automatically just screams bad quality and kind of gets players to just not play for very long or not give the game a chance. So after, about 2 weeks of struggling with the release, having to reset the game multiple times, we were able to achieve about 20,000 to 40,000 individual play sessions. To get that many players, guess how many Robux that cost? About 200,000 Robux on ads, which honestly, I don't recommend anyone ever do that. That being said, you need to get enough players when you release the game. And the reason for that is that to be able to get into the algorithm, you need enough data points for the algorithm to know how good your game is. So for those of you that don't know, the algorithm looks at the game's performance over a few week period, meaning that it'll look at the first week of release and see how many players play and how long they play for. This makes playtime probably the most important metric when you're trying to look at a game's level of success. Now, to properly illustrate this, let's take a look at a little game called Ludify. This is a new game that just came out recently that I honestly absolutely love. The game design of this game is so well executed, which is directly reflected in their playtime and therefore also reflected in their average players. What they do really well is they get the player engaged as soon as they join by giving them loot crates to just constantly roll. As all of us are gambling addicts, it's really hard to quit when you're just waiting for that high of rolling a really good item. And then on top of that, they have crisp, simple combat, and then you're just grinding to upgrade and get through all of those dungeons. It's just really well executed, there's no bugs, and it just looks great. Now, that's where I find that Infection kind of fell short, was there's no real strict progression, and then it's also kind of hard to grind out the game. Like, you're really just grinding for coins to buy more weapons to then just continue playing PvP. And then we also added a level up mechanism, but honestly, it just isn't as engaging or naturally fun as it is to just roll crates and try and progress through dungeons. I think this calls back to what makes tower defense games kind of fun, where the fact that you can play by yourself and grind it out, or you can play with friends as well. And I think that that's where Ludify also does really well, and Infection just doesn't, because it's really boring to play by yourself. We also had a slight issue where people found that the game was kind of cash grabby, which I find slightly insulting considering the amount of work that went into this game, and it was not supposed to be a cash grab at all. Like, when you put Infection side by side with another cash grab game, they just don't look similar at all, and there's nothing wrong with cash grab games. Like, I have friends that do cash grabs, they make millions of dollars, they're super successful and great for them. But it just feels dishonest when you put so much effort for it not to be a cash grab and people are just complaining that it's cash grabby. That being said, you live and you learn. Next time, I'm gonna be more careful about that. Now, let's dive into the analytics. So basically, I was telling you guys all of this because this is what explains the playtime not being where we want it to be. So our average playtime is not bad, but it's not as high as it needs to be. So you really want to have an average playtime of about 7 to 10 minutes to really get into algorithm, and then you want a click-through rate of either 1.5 to about 3% if you're really good. So our returning players was not high enough, and then also the monetization things were actually not bad for this game, so you really want to have like a high conversion rate as well as a high average purchase, because obviously Roblox wants to make money. So if you're making them money, they are going to be more prone to put you into the algorithm. So basically, the analytics were never good enough to get us into algorithm, meaning that this project was basically a complete and utter failure at this point. That being said, I kind of have the mentality that failures are never really a failure if you learn something from it. So basically, there was actually quite a few different learning experiences with this game. But first, I just want to thank everyone in the community that has supported me through this process as well as building this game, especially all the moderators and all of the community management team. They were incredible throughout this whole process, and I'm really happy that I was able to meet them, as well as our investor and everyone else that was directly involved in the game. So, first learning lesson, use YouTubers, not Roblox ads. So this kind of seems straightforward, but Roblox ads is just quick players, while YouTubers is more, loyal players that are gonna come back and become part of the community and become part of the fan base. Without that core community, the game will never get off the ground because ads players never come back and play more, and their average playtime will be lower than anyone else. Another thing that I highly recommend if you're thinking of getting into game development is to build a team. Because I did most of this project by myself. It was kind of a pain in the butt. So if you just don't have the budget to be able to spend 300,000 Robux, build a game with your friends, have fun, enjoy the process. Don't worry about getting players, because players will come if the game is good. Finally, this is a bit obvious, but you need a strong community before release. So we only had about 120 people in the Discord before release. So, naturally, there was not a lot of players on release that already kind of knew about the game or that were testers beforehand. So I highly recommend, if you can, to have a Discord of at least 500 people before you release a game. But this is all a part of the journey, and I'm hoping that the next game will work better. Now, leave a comment down below what type of game I should be making next, because my next video will be starting that project. So the top comment will probably be the type of game that I'm going to be making next. If you haven't already, also leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a great day.